when I was on staff at Bel Air Presbyterian Church in Los Angeles, where my wife and I got married. We were asked if we would be willing to lead a team of young adults on a mission trip outreach to Zimbabwe, Africa. And absolutely, Africa, that sounds fantastic. In fact, the missions director asked where would we like to take a group, thinking that because Libby speaks Spanish fluently, we'd pick a Latin America country. But neither Libby or I had ever been to Africa, and so we thought, well, if we get to choose, let's go there. And thankfully the church had missionaries in Africa, and they said, yeah, if that's where you want to take a group, that's perfectly fine. So Libby and I trained a group of young adults who became really good friends of ours, and went off to Zimbabwe. But before the trip with the group, I went on a pre-trip with one of the pastors, Roger Dermody, to meet the missionaries and make plans and logistics. And when we got there, among other things, the missionary took us to a park, a preserve called Antelope Park, where they raise lions, and then once they get to be old enough and strong enough, send them back into the wild, because the wild African lion population was dwindling for many reasons, none of them good. So we went to Antelope Park, and we got to walk with lions. They were females, 3 of them, all under the age of 2. And the trainers said, there's not much you need to worry about. The lions will treat you as one of the pride, and they'll either ignore you or they may sniff you or whatever, but you have very little to worry about. But just in case, we're giving you this little stick, which seemed puny. And you should know that if we ever say, if you yell out a command like stand up or look out, don't stop to think, are they talking to me? Just do it. He said, because even though the lions are not hungry and they don't want to eat you, their claws are still very sharp, as are their teeth. So keep that in mind. So this is all very exciting, walking with the lions, live lions. And we walked through this beautiful savanna preserve. It's close to sunset. I mean, it's a pristine, gorgeous African experience. And at one point, one of the lions went off by itself for a while. 2 of them were with us, and then one of those 2 laid down and decided to just rest for a few minutes. And so I thought, this is a perfect picture opportunity. So I went slowly and carefully behind where the lion was lying down, and I crouched down next to this female lion, not super close, but right behind it to make a picture and video opportunity. Roger was on the camera. And what I didn't know was that as soon as I crouched down next to the lion, that made me a perfect target for the other lions. They thought, he's small, he wants to play. I didn't know any of this, of course. I was just posing for my great picture. And so another lion crouches down and starts stalking me, walking up very slowly and carefully. Roger's watching all of this through the camera, and you can see in the video later that the camera starts to shake because he's starting to giggle. And then suddenly I hear the trainer yell, "Stand up!" And I knew wasn't going to ask, is that me? As I stood up, the other lion stood up behind me and reached over to my back, grabbed me by the sides, just under my arms on the lats, and with his teeth hooked into my shirt and claws hooked into my shirt just for a split second. And of course my heart started racing and I thought I was gonna die, and I started screaming, get down, and I was spinning around and trying to find my little stick, and the lion just jumped down and wandered on as if nothing had even happened. And my heart's pounding out of my chest, and I look around, and suddenly it dawned on me, I survived a lion attack. Yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome. When I look back on the video, it lasted all of a millisecond, but it still was pretty awesome. And as you can imagine, I've kept that shirt to this day, a long sleeve white shirt with 3 holes in it, 1 from claws, 2 from claws, 1 from a tooth. The lion didn't break the skin. So then months later, after some training, Libby and I took this group to Zimbabwe. We worked at a camp, a youth camp in Zimbabwe, and the children from the public schools came out to the camp to learn about ecology. We helped prepare the meals. We did a little bit of teaching. And because Zimbabwe didn't have any rules about separation of church and state, were able to share our faith and do music for the kids, and just fell in love with the African people. It was an absolutely amazing experience. We took the group we crammed the group into this tiny, rickety old minivan that was probably made for, I don't know, 9 passengers, and we had 12 or something, and we weren't sure it was even roadworthy, but we didn't have a lot of choices. So we headed across Zimbabwe up to Victoria Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. That one of the guys on the trip, he was probably the worrier in the group, and when we were driving across Africa to Zimbabwe, to the Victoria Falls in this bus, all crammed in and luggage strapped all over it, which was very common in Zimbabwe. I mean, we saw trucks that should have carried 10 people that had 100, and buses the same. But he was sure we were going to die. We stopped for groceries and gas at one point, and he just got he froze. He just sat down on the sidewalk, and he didn't want to go any further. He knew that this was going to be the last day of his life. He didn't get a chance to say goodbye to his parents, and had to do my best to tell him, hey, God got us this far. He didn't bring us out here to abandon us. So either we believe he's going to watch over us, or we don't. What do you want to do? And you want to stay here on the sidewalk and then hope somebody finds you, or do you want to come along? And finally coax him back into the van. Anyway, we got to stay overnight on another preserve on our way to Victoria Falls, and we got this guy in a truck to take us out to see the animals, go to the watering holes. We saw giraffe and hippos and all sorts of birds and elephants, lots of elephants. In fact, on our way back at dusk, we were coming down this dirt road back to the lodges, and a herd of elephants had lined up across the road, shoulder to shoulder, facing our truck. And the driver just pulled to a stop, turned the engine off, and turned to us and calmly said, if they choose to charge us, which they probably won't, but if they do, there's nothing we can do, we will die. He said it very matter-of-factly. And apparently that's true, because they could run fast enough, and they were big enough, they would just run right over the truck that we were in. And so we all started praying, dear God, don't let us die here underneath the foot of an elephant. And one particularly loud and stern mother elephant started trumpeting, stomping her feet, kicking up dust, and making it sound like, yep, this is it, this is the charge, we're dead. And we just stayed there, held our ground. We're like, why aren't we going backwards? Why aren't you sticking in reverse and just go as fast as we can? And the driver said, if we start moving, that's going to get her to come after us. We're like, oh, crud. So we just waited. And eventually the mother decided we weren't a threat to her babies after all. They crossed over the road and headed down to the pond, and then she followed after them, gave us a little snort at the end to let us know, don't we ever cross the paths between she and her babies again. And I honestly hope I never do. In Victoria Falls, there's this suspended bridge that crosses over from Zimbabwe to Zambia. And it's, I don't know, a couple 100 feet above the water, above the Zambezi River. And the waterfalls is all along this long cliff face. It's spectacular. It's impossible to describe. And in the middle of this suspension bridge, there's a little hut and some locals with bungee cords offering bungee jumping off of this bridge over the Zambezi River right next to Victoria Falls. I mean, spectacular. Who could pass up an opportunity like that, right? And so I was all ready to go. There's no reason I could think of where I shouldn't jump off of this bridge with nothing more than a bungee cord tied around my ankles. Of course, my wife talked sense into me, and she said, Joe, I know you're an adventurous type. I know you would do this in a heartbeat, especially if I wasn't here to talk you out of it. But she says, I doubt if there's any regulations about the safety of these harnesses. I don't think they're checked out very often. And quite honestly, if the bungee cord breaks and you land in the river, there's crocodiles and hippos down there just waiting to eat you up. She said, I really don't want this to be the end of our marriage. So, of course, she talked sense into me, and I didn't jump off the bridge, although I would have, because of the inflation rate, which was outrageous at that time. You go to a gas pump, and if there was gas at a gas station, And after the little digits, they had painted zeros on to the pumps. And because the inflation kept going and going, they'd have to add another zero and add another zero until you were paying like $1 million something, whatever the local currency was, for a gallon of gas. And you go to the grocery store. We were at the grocery store with the missionaries, and the missionary mom looks at her daughter, who was probably 8 years old or something, and said, "How much do you think the groceries are going to be today, honey?" And she says, in her beautiful accent, she says, "Oh, about, $35 million." And Libby and I were like, "Oh, that's cute. Oh, a girl thinks it's going to be $35 million for groceries." And sure enough, it was $34,900,000, whatever, because we had no idea what the rate was. But apparently they just kept going up and up. And of course, that's with the groceries that we could find in the store. Many of the shelves were just bare. Certainly an amazing experience, a lesson in seeing what missionaries have to go through to answer the call of God on their life. And we became lifelong friends with Alistair and Shelley Crowdis and their family, who are still in Zimbabwe ministering the gospel. Yeah, amazing. So Cape Town, we got to go to Cape Town at the end of our mission, rode the cable car up to the top of Table Mountain, which is 360-degree panorama cable car that turns as you go up, which, I'm glued to the window, loving every second of it. Libby's sitting in the center with her eyes closed, basically with her arms wrapped around the operator's leg, praying to God that she didn't die. And we got up there and got to take some pictures, spectacular views. And then we drove down. Had one day to drive down to the South Point, the Cape of Good Hope, the southernmost tip of the African continent. Got a rental car and had to remember how to drive on the other side of the road. And when we got to the rental, it was pouring rain, really, really bad weather. I remember the people at the counter where we were renting the car said, "So, what's your plans?" I said, "Oh, we're going to go down to the Cape and see if we just have this one day." And then they said, "Well, you sure picked a good day for it. The weather's fabulous." Thankfully, the weather did clear up. We drove down all the way to the Cape of Good Hope and climbed up to this lookout where there was a lighthouse and signs pointing to different parts of the world. We saw on another part of the trip, we got to see the penguin colony that had migrated up from Antarctica and had overtaken this beach and were populating the beach, and get to see them in all different stages. And amazing. We just fell in love with everything about Africa. And in fact, we were told several times, once you get to Africa, Africa gets to you, and you'll never forget it. And I don't. I am so grateful for that experience, for the friends that I made, for the near death experiences that I survived. It's been an amazing opportunity for me to have traveled to so many different parts of the world, and rarely as a tourist, oftentimes doing some sort of service work or doing concerts on a mission or whatever, and being able to be with the people in their homes, eating their food, hearing stories about their lives, understanding what life looks like from their vantage point. Absolutely priceless.